As Thomas placed his last grocery bag into the trunk of his truck, a faint whimper from the neighboring vehicle caught his attention. Turning, he noticed a small cage in the back of a weathered pickup. Inside was a tiny, scruffy creature huddled in the corner. The pup's fur was matted, but its eyes wide and soulful pierced through Thomas's heart. The dog was stunning despite its condition, with a fluffiness that hinted at what could be a majestic coat if cared for. Intrigued, Thomas waited by the truck until its owner returned, hoping to ask about the little animal. A burly farmer in mud-caked boots approached, looking surprised to see Thomas lingering. "Cute pup," Thomas started, motioning toward the cage. "Where'd you get him?" The farmer sighed, running a hand over his stubbled chin. "Found him near my farm," he said. "More like he found us. Poor thing's been a nuisance, though. Got into the chicken coop. Killed some of my hens. Can't afford that kind of loss, so I was taking him to the vet." To put him down, Thomas's stomach tightened. Put him down? He's just a puppy. "He's trouble," the farmer replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "Someone probably dumped him on the road nearby, and he wandered onto my property looking for food. I can't keep every stray that shows up. This one's cost me enough already." Thomas felt a wave of anger and compassion surge within him. This wasn't the puppy's fault. It was hungry and alone, following its instincts to survive. "What if I take him?" he asked, the words surprising even himself. The farmer's eyebrows shot up. "You serious?" "Yeah, I'll take him. How much do you need to replace the hens?" The farmer hesitated, then shrugged. "Give me $50 and he's yours. But I never want to see him on my land again." Thomas handed over the cash, carefully lifted the trembling pup from the cage, and cradled it in his arms. The puppy's body relaxed against his chest, a small sigh escaping its tiny frame. "You're safe now," Thomas whispered. On the drive home, the weight of his impulsive decision began to sink in. Thomas lived in a small cabin on the outskirts of a bustling Colorado town, with little space for an energetic puppy. Yet, as the pup snuggled into his lap, its trust evident, Thomas knew he'd made the right choice. He named the puppy Scout, inspired by the animal's spirit of survival. Over the next few weeks, Thomas rearranged his cabin to make room for his new companion. Scout was playful, mischievous, and full of energy, constantly stealing Thomas's hats and tugging on the sleeves of his jackets. The bond between them grew quickly. Scout's playful antics brought joy into Thomas's otherwise quiet life, and Thomas felt his days filled with purpose. But it didn't take long for Thomas to realize something unusual about Scout. His paws were larger than he expected for a puppy, and his sharp amber eyes had a wildness to them. His howl when he finally let one out was deeper and more haunting than any dog Thomas had heard before. Curious, Thomas scheduled a visit to the vet. After a thorough examination, the vet leaned back and looked at Thomas with a hint of amusement. "Thomas, Scout isn't a regular dog." "What do you mean?" Thomas asked, his brow furrowed. "Scout's a wolf-dog hybrid, likely more wolf than dog." The words hit Thomas like a thunderclap. A wolf? The playful pup he'd rescued and grown to love wasn't a domestic dog at all, but a creature with wild instincts and needs far beyond what he'd anticipated. "I don't care," Thomas said after a pause, his voice steady. "He's mine, and I'll figure out what he needs." Caring for Scout required a complete overhaul of Thomas's life. He fenced off a portion of his property to give Scout room to roam and researched tirelessly to learn how to balance nurturing his wolfish instincts with ensuring his safety. Scout's loyalty was unmatched, and Thomas discovered a love that was raw and wild, a bond built on mutual trust and respect. Months later, as Thomas and Scout stood on a ridge overlooking the sunset-drenched valley, Thomas realized how much his life had changed. Scout wasn't just a pet, he was family. Saving him had been an active impulse, but it had filled Thomas's life with adventure, love, and an understanding of what it truly meant to care for another being. In Scout's amber eyes, Thomas saw both the wilderness he'd come from and the trust he'd placed in the human who had chosen to save him. Together, they had created a home that bridged the wild and the domestic, a place where both of them could truly belong. Thomas had always thought of himself as an animal lover, but raising Lucky was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The playful puppy he'd rescued from a farmer's truck quickly became his closest companion. Lucky had a knack for stealing Thomas's hats and hoodies, chewing the former to bits and curling up on the latter for naps. His mischievous yet endearing antics made every day a little brighter. Despite Lucky's boundless energy, he was surprisingly obedient during their long walks through the dense forest surrounding Thomas's cabin. He trotted along at Thomas's pace, his fluffy black coat shimmering under the dappled sunlight. The only exception was when they encountered other dogs. Lucky would erupt with excitement, pulling at the leash in his eagerness to meet every dog he saw, even if the feeling wasn't mutual. People often complimented Lucky's playful spirit and gentle demeanor, but as time passed, their reactions began to change. Lucky was growing, and not just in the way most dogs do. His size quickly became a topic of conversation. By the time he was 6 months old, he was larger than many fully grown dogs. His thick, luxurious coat and sharp, striking eyes added to his intimidating appearance. Neighbors and strangers began to keep their distance, their expressions wary. Thomas tried to brush off their unease, convincing himself that Lucky was just a particularly large wolf-dog hybrid. But deep down, he began to worry. What if something was wrong? What if Lucky's rapid growth was a sign of an underlying health issue? Unable to ignore his concerns, Thomas decided to take Lucky to the vet. The moment they walked through the clinic's door, the room fell silent. The receptionist's eyes widened as she quickly ushered them into a separate room. Thomas knew Lucky was harmless, but the staff's reactions told him otherwise. When the vet entered, he greeted Thomas warmly, but froze when his gaze landed on Lucky. "Well, that's quite a big boy you've got there," he said with a nervous laugh. Lucky, ever affectionate, rested his massive head on Thomas's shoulder, his tail wagging gently. "He's just a little bigger than I expected," Thomas admitted, trying to keep the mood light. "But he's a sweetheart, I promise." The vet nodded, beginning his examination. As he inspected Lucky's coat, teeth, and posture, his expression turned thoughtful. "He's healthy," the vet said finally, closing his clipboard. "Incredibly healthy, actually. There's nothing to worry about there." Thomas let out a sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. "There's something else," the vet continued, his voice taking on a cautious tone. "Lucky isn't a dog. He's a full-blooded Canadian black wolf." The words hung in the air, heavy and surreal. Thomas blinked, struggling to process what he'd just heard. "Oh, wolf?" The vet nodded. "No dog in his lineage. He's as wild as they come." The revelation was staggering. Thomas's mind raced as he tried to piece together the mystery of Lucky's origins. Had he been separated from his pack? Abandoned by someone who didn't understand what they were taking on? Whatever the case, Lucky's fate had brought him to Thomas, who had unknowingly been raising a wild animal as his beloved pet. For a moment, Thomas's chest tightened with fear. What did this mean for Lucky? Could he still keep him? But when he looked down at the massive wolf resting at his side, his doubts melted away. Lucky gazed up at him with the same unwavering trust he'd shown since the day they met. Aggression wasn't in Lucky's nature, love and loyalty were. From that day forward, Thomas's life changed. He delved into research, learning everything he could about wolves and their behaviors. He expanded Lucky's living space, creating a large enclosure that allowed him to roam safely while still spending time in the cabin. The transition wasn't always easy, but Thomas was determined to give Lucky the life he deserved. As time passed, the bond between Thomas and Lucky only grew stronger. The wolf, once abandoned and misunderstood, had found a home, and in doing so, he'd transformed Thomas's life. Lucky wasn't just a pet, he was family. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, Thomas knew he would face them together with his loyal, extraordinary companion by his side. Thomas had always thought of Lucky as an extraordinary dog, one with boundless energy and a curious, playful spirit. Aside from his overwhelming preference for meat over kibble, there was nothing to suggest that Lucky wasn't an ordinary canine. But everything changed the day the vet revealed the truth. Lucky wasn't a dog at all. He was a full-blooded Canadian black wolf. The news left Thomas stunned. As domesticated as Lucky appeared, the vet explained he would never survive in the wild. Releasing him wasn't an option. Yet keeping him wasn't simple either. Treating a wolf like a dog wasn't just impractical, it could be dangerous. Lucky was too large, too wild, and far too unique for a suburban backyard. The vet advised Thomas to contact the local wildlife authority to determine Lucky's future. Thomas was terrified. The thought of losing Lucky was unbearable. Over the months they had spent together, Lucky had become more than just a pet, he was family. A few days later, a wildlife inspector visited Thomas's home to assess the situation. Thomas braced himself for the worst, but when the inspector arrived and saw the bond between man and wolf, he hesitated. The connection between them was undeniable. Lucky wasn't just a wild animal. He was a devoted companion, and the inspector didn't want to break that bond if it could be avoided. The inspector, however, made one thing clear: Thomas would have to move Lucky out of the city. Wolves, even ones raised like Lucky, didn't belong in urban areas. Thomas would also need to meet strict requirements to keep Lucky legally. It was a daunting list. Most people would have given up, but Thomas didn't hesitate. Lucky had trusted him, and Thomas wasn't about to let him down. Selling his home and liquidating his savings, Thomas purchased a small plot of land on the edge of a forest. It was remote, peaceful, and perfect for a wolf to thrive. The inspector worked closely with Thomas, ensuring that Lucky's new environment met all legal and safety requirements. Thomas constructed a large, secure enclosure, giving Lucky plenty of space to run and play. He attended workshops on wolf care and studied wildlife behavior to better understand his companion's needs. The process was exhausting, but every step felt worthwhile. Lucky's new home allowed him to unleash his wild side while still staying close to the human he loved. Thomas marveled at how Lucky adapted to the changes. Despite his size and strength, Lucky remained the same playful and affectionate soul he had always been. He'd nibble on Thomas's hoodie or rest his massive head on his shoulder, his golden eyes filled with trust. Eager to share their incredible journey, Thomas began documenting their story on social media. He posted videos of Lucky as a tiny, fluffy pup and as the majestic wolf he had grown into. Viewers were captivated. It wasn't just Lucky's striking appearance that drew people in, but the extraordinary bond between man and wolf. In one clip, Lucky playfully tugged at Thomas's ear, earning a laugh from his audience. "He's a wolf," Thomas explained in the video, "but to me, he's just my best friend." The response was overwhelming. People were inspired by Thomas's commitment and moved by Lucky's transformation. The story wasn't just about rescuing a wolf. It was about the lengths love and trust could go to bridge the gap between species. As the months passed, Lucky thrived in his new environment. He ran freely, explored the land, and basked in the care Thomas provided. Thomas, too, found his life enriched in ways he never imagined. Taking care of Lucky had taught him patience, resilience, and the value of unwavering loyalty. Together, they had faced challenges, but they had also built a life that neither of them could have imagined. Thomas knew their story was far from over. Lucky's origins might have been wild, but his future was one of love, safety, and companionship. Their journey wasn't just a testament to the bond between humans and animals. It was a reminder that sometimes life's greatest surprises come from the most unexpected places. Thomas never thought his life would revolve around Lucky, his affectionate and playful companion who turned out to be a Canadian black wolf. Lucky had a wild heart but a gentle soul, and despite his sharp teeth and imposing size, he never posed a threat to Thomas. However, when the truth about Lucky's origins became public through social media, the story took an unexpected turn. Thomas's posts about Lucky quickly went viral. People were mesmerized by the unique bond between a man and his wolf. Some praised him for rescuing Lucky from an uncertain fate, while others criticized him for taking in a wild animal without realizing it. Opinions flooded, and some doubting his ability to care for Lucky, and others rallying in support, charmed by the undeniable connection between the two. Amid the growing online attention, Thomas's focus remained on meeting the wildlife inspector's requirements. The inspector had been firm. Lucky needed a much larger enclosure to ensure he was truly comfortable. Although Thomas took Lucky on long walks and provided plenty of playtime, it wasn't enough. The inspector laid down a clear ultimatum: make the necessary upgrades or risk losing Lucky. The challenge was monumental. Thomas had poured his savings into buying the property and constructing a secure enclosure. With the inspector's strict deadline looming, he felt trapped. His job in the city wasn't enough to fund the additional upgrades, and the reality of potentially losing Lucky began to sink in. The thought of parting with his best friend was unbearable. Thomas started distancing himself from Lucky, hoping it would make the transition easier if the wolf had to leave. But the separation was agonizing for both of them. Lucky became visibly depressed, his once joyful demeanor replaced by confusion and sadness. Thomas was heartbroken, watching the animal he loved retreat into despair. He feared that Lucky wouldn't survive the loss of the only family he had ever known. Just when all hope seemed lost, something extraordinary happened. A close friend, moved by Thomas's plight, shared his story online, detailing the financial and emotional struggles he was facing. The post struck a chord with thousands of people who'd been following Thomas and Lucky's journey. Offers of support began pouring in from strangers who wanted to help. Donations, advice, and offers to volunteer flooded Thomas's inbox. People who believed in their bond refused to let the story end on a sad note. Inspired by this overwhelming kindness, Thomas threw himself into completing the upgrades. Volunteers helped construct a larger, more natural enclosure for Lucky, while donations covered the costs of materials and necessary certifications. Within weeks, the transformation was complete. The inspector returned, visibly impressed by the improvements. Lucky's new home provided him with plenty of room to roam, play, and thrive in a safe environment. More importantly, it allowed him to stay with Thomas, the man who had saved him and become his family. When the inspector officially licensed Thomas as a wildlife caretaker, relief and joy washed over him. Lucky, sensing the change, nuzzled his head into Thomas's shoulder, his tail wagging with unrestrained happiness. It was a moment of triumph born from love, determination, and the kindness of a community that refused to see them separated. Thomas continued to share updates about Lucky, celebrating their new life in a way that inspired others. Their journey became a testament to resilience, the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, and the power of people coming together to make a difference. For Thomas and Lucky, the struggles they faced only strengthened their connection and proved that extraordinary things could happen when love and loyalty lead the way. When Thomas first laid eyes on Lucky, a scruffy little pup trembling in the back of a farmer's truck, he had no idea how much his life was about to change. That moment, driven by instinct and compassion, marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Over time, Thomas learned that Lucky wasn't just any dog, he was a Canadian black wolf. As surprising as that revelation was, it only deepened their bond and set Thomas on a path he never imagined. Lucky's transformation from a helpless pup to a majestic, playful companion was inspiring, but their journey hit a major roadblock when Thomas learned about the legal requirements for keeping a wild animal. The wildlife inspector's visit brought both hope and a heavy burden. Thomas had to meet strict regulations to create a safe, spacious sanctuary for Lucky, or he'd lose him forever. At first, the challenges seemed insurmountable. Thomas had spent everything he had on his property, leaving no room for the extensive upgrades needed. But then, a single post about Lucky's story changed everything. When a friend shared the story online, it touched thousands of hearts. Donations poured in from animal lovers around the world who couldn't bear the thought of Lucky and Thomas being separated. People offered their time, skills, and resources, showing just how much they believed in the bond between the man and his wolf. Even the inspector, initially skeptical, contributed to the cause. When he returned to see Thomas's progress, he was amazed at the transformation. The enclosure was now a proper sanctuary, a space where Lucky could run freely, explore, and feel safe. With everything meeting the legal standards, the inspector smiled as he delivered the news Thomas had been desperate to hear. Lucky could stay. The relief and joy were overwhelming, not just for Thomas, but for everyone who had followed their story. Lucky's playful antics and affectionate nature had made him an internet sensation, and now his story had a happy ending, or rather, a new beginning. Thomas celebrated by spending more time with Lucky, rebuilding the trust that had briefly faltered during their struggles. But Thomas's vision didn't stop with Lucky. His journey with the wolf had inspired him to do more. There were countless animals in need, and Thomas now had the means, the space, and the determination to help them. He began designing merchandise featuring Lucky's image, raising funds to support his sanctuary. The response was overwhelming, with people eager to contribute in any way they could. As word spread, Thomas became the go-to person for rescuing wolves and wolf hybrids. He couldn't say no to any animal in need, and Lucky gained new companions, other wolves, hybrids, and even animals of different species. The sanctuary grew into a haven where creatures of all kinds found safety and love. Recently, Thomas shared videos of his newest residents, wild boars who love belly rubs. His natural talent for bonding with animals amazed everyone. It was clear that the day Thomas found Lucky wasn't just the day he saved a life. It was the day he found his true calling. Thomas's ultimate dream is to create vast, natural enclosures where each animal can live as close to the wild as possible, while still enjoying the safety and care of the sanctuary. For Lucky, who could never survive on his own, Thomas hopes to give him the next best thing, a home that honors his wild spirit while celebrating the unique bond they share. Life has changed dramatically since those early days when Thomas believed Lucky was just a dog. What hasn't changed is the unbreakable connection between them. Through every challenge, every heartbreak, and every triumph, Thomas has poured his heart into giving Lucky and his growing animal family the love they deserve. This story is a testament to the power of compassion, perseverance, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. It's a reminder that small acts of kindness can lead to life-changing outcomes for both the giver and the receiver. The story of Thomas and Lucky serves as a powerful reminder of the transformative impact compassion and determination can have not only on the lives of animals, but on our own. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to overlook the needs of those who cannot speak for themselves. Yet, Lucky's journey teaches us that small acts of kindness, when paired with unwavering commitment, can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Thomas could have walked away, overwhelmed by the challenges of raising a wolf. But instead, he chose to embrace the unknown, adapt his life, and fight for the bond he had formed. This story encourages us to reflect on our own lives and ask, where can we show more compassion? It may not be rescuing a wolf, but it could be volunteering at an animal shelter, fostering a pet, or even offering a helping hand to a neighbor in need. The key lesson is that meaningful change often requires stepping out of our comfort zones and committing to something bigger than ourselves. In your daily life, remember that challenges are opportunities in disguise. Just as Thomas transformed his life to provide a sanctuary for Lucky, we too can overcome obstacles with persistence and creativity. Whether it's in relationships, work, or personal growth, approach challenges with the same determination, knowing that the effort can lead to incredible rewards. And most importantly, never underestimate the ripple effect of your actions. What starts as a small gesture can inspire countless others to do the same, creating a community of care and compassion. Would you have helped Lucky if you'd found him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who loves animals. Together, we can create more stories of hope and second chances. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Please rate this story from 1 to 10. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reactions, and suggestions for new stories. Share your opinion and help us make the channel even better.